Welcome to Creative Insights, the workshop for financial advisors, insurance professionals, and financial consultants. Today's workshop, How Understanding Tax Correlation Sells Insurance Products. Part 1 of our 5-part series entitled, The Power of Tax-Free Retirement Income. What if you believe something to be true, but it actually turns out to be false? When would you want to know about it? I've asked my audiences many times when we're talking about retirement income, and especially when I'm using life insurance as a tax-free income play, do you see this as a legitimate alternative for retirement? And most people don't know it, and a lot of people have some false fables, myths, they have misconstrued facts. So many times what I want to do is, if I want to change the way you see things, and I'm going to try to be as agnostic as I can, and one of my fondest little proverbs that I like to say all the time is, if you could change the way you see things, the things you see will change. And how do I get you to change that? I need you to focus on what I call the facts of the case. So all the time when we walk through these seminars, I'm always looking at different areas, trying to be as empirical as I can, factual as I can, and when I use the mathematics, to be as fair as I can. So I want to be able to focus. And when I'm talking about focusing on these things, I'm not talking about aiming at anything. When I talk about focus, I'm talking about, do I see right? When I go into my optometrist, I say, here's my glasses. Do I need a new upgrade in my prescription? He'll take me through a gauntlet of trial and error questions as I'm looking through different lenses until I get a good quality read. I have to wear glasses. I've been wearing it now for almost 15 years. So I always know that I'm seeing correctly after I go through my optometrist and I get my new prescription. So I want to be able to focus and make sure that I'm seeing clearly. And part of seeing clearly is I went to this seminar at the Thunderbird School of Management here in Scottsdale. And I was surprised that during this seminar, they had about 13 different sessions that you could attend. It was attended by millionaires and a few billionaires from all over the world. And during that time period, I noticed that the #1 seminar at the Thunderbird School of Management was on variable universal life. It was really remarkable. I wanted to start asking people around my table, why is this so popular to you as an investor? And that, of course, their #1 issue was that they could actually invest in the market and have a tax wrapper around it. So the #1 issue for them was definitely taxes. And why is that so true about life insurance? Well, one of the big plays that you can see is that the affluent are seeking tax relief from ordinary income and capital gains. And if I might add, the middle class is seeking tax relief from ordinary income and Social Security benefit taxation. So those are two camps, the affluent and the middle class, both seeking tax relief. And why life insurance? Because, at least today, under current law, withdrawals of basis and/or collateralized policy loans of gain from a non-modified endowment contract kept in force for the life of the insured will never come on the tax 1040, or won't be taxable income. Now, this is really important when you think about it. During retirement, there's a lot of places that I can use tax-free life insurance withdrawals to basis and policy loans to gain. I can delay many times my retirement income and try to max out my Social Security by age 70. I can delay my qualified plans. There's just a lot of good strategies and tactics that I want to use for life insurance. And sometimes I even use it as its pure planning play for people who really don't need a deduction off an ERISA product, and I'll be more on that throughout the week. Let's talk about for a moment some of the other ideas. We know that we can take a life insurance collateralized policy loan from a contract, and there are other places that are similar that you might be already accustomed to. Not only can I take policy loans out of a contract of my gain, but you could take out a home equity loan on the basis of the equity in your house. And many Americans know this. They use it as sometimes instead of a second mortgage, they'll just use it for house repair, whatever they want to do. But that income coming out of their equity is not taxed because it's a loan against their home. Some of our seniors are taking reverse mortgage loans. They actually take income off their home, which are in the form of loans, and those loans are they're not on the 1040, and therefore they're not taxable as well. And then, of course, the margin account loans. Some people who have really sizable portfolios can actually do a margin loan off their portfolio, and that income or that policy or that loan off their margin account is not includable. Now, I want to talk about tax correlation because in our field, especially as an insurance professionals or financial advisors, many times we're just saying we get withdrawals of basis and policy loans of gain from a life insurance contracts tax-free. But we don't talk about the tax correlation of other investments that we're actually competing against. Let's talk about the first one first, and that would be ordinary income tax. Now, in ordinary income tax, it's interesting. the policy that we're trying to keep in force needs to be kept in force for the life of the insured. If that contract was ever defaulted on or terminated or for whatever reason, bad performance, and the contract actually fell into default or lapsed, all the gain in that contract would be taxed at ordinary income tax rates. But not only that, but all the loan money or the loan charges or interest that were also associated with that policy would also be taxed and due. So it's really critical to make sure that the maturity of the contract as well as the client, we have to keep this in force for the life of the client. So ordinary income tax is a big deal, and we want to make sure that at least our own product, which we're trying to use as a defense against ordinary income tax and other products, that we in our own product line do this right. So we have to keep the contract in force for the life of the contract. If it ever terminated or lapsed, it would actually create a phantom income tax, and all the money due that was loans on gain and interest loans that were inside the policy, even though nobody took constructive receipt, all of that would become taxable and due in the year that it defaulted. Now I want to talk a little bit about capital gains. And interestingly enough, I was with a client, and a client came to me and said, Steve, I had a $10,000 capital gain on my funds, and he was trumpeting the fact that he was going to pay 15% capital gains in his bracket. And I was looking through his 1040, and I noticed that the actual capital gain pushed him over the edge, and the money flowed from his profit. In other words, he made $10,000. He only had to pay $1,500 in capital gains, but the actual $10,000 in actual capital gains flowed to his Social Security, and his Social Security provisional income test included that income, and that bumped him into the taxable event on his Social Security benefits. He never thought he was paying ordinary income tax on his Social Security benefits because they should be free, but he didn't understand that there are many correlating income products that will actually cause your Social Security to be taxed. So even though he was doing a capital gain treatment on his actual portfolio, the actual income, the total income, not the tax, but the total income of $10,000 flowed over to his Social Security, and he had to pay tax on that as well. That was a surprise, and that was news to him. So it's really important that we really talk about this. And just to dip out a little bit here, I want to show you something that I think you're going to find pretty amazing. When we're looking at the three different forms of income, we're looking at three kinds. One is the ordinary income that comes from personal service like salaries, bonus, commissions. You're looking at portfolio like dividend, interest, royalties, capital gains, losses. You're looking at passive income. All these fall down to your adjusted gross income to find out where you're going to lay at the first page of your 1040. So it's pretty important. But what I really wanted to show you about this is when I'm talking about capital gains in and of itself is looking at the new Obamacare tax on top of the capital gains. So when I'm looking at regular capital gains and losses, I can look inside, see what kind of, how long I've held the product, the financial document, and then I can figure out, okay, I'm going to pay capital gains at maybe 15%. Or if I'm an affluent American, I might be paying at the 20%. But after Obamacare, I might be paying even more simply because now we're tracking this new 3.8 tax on net investment income. That brings capital gains to some of our affluent clients all the way up to 23.8%. So it's really a critical issue to look at because now all of a sudden capital gains become something that we need to really look at. And then on top of that, there's another tax that may be something that you may look at for your clients called the 0.9% additional hospital insurance tax. Some affluent clients in America will not only pay the 20% capital gain, the actual 3.8% because of the imposition of Obamacare, but add on top of that 0.9% in additional hospital insurance tax. Those could actually bring his capital gain charge up to 24.7. So it's really important to make sure that we see this. And remember, any income off any of this is not just capital gains, but all that gain flows over to the Social Security provisional income test and could cause taxation on our Social Security benefits. Now, another thing that I want to talk about after capital gains is the AMT. I had a client that we were reviewing his portfolio a couple years back. And as I was reviewing his portfolio, I was taken back, I have to say, that he had so much loaded in municipal bonds. So if I have a client that has 1.2 million in portfolio assets and he's got 400 plus in municipal bonds, what's his psychological profile? Well, I can just tell you, he must really hate taxes because he's buying municipal bonds to avoid taxation. I was reviewing his 1040. When I got to the second page, I asked him and called him up. I said, were you aware that you were paying alternative minimum tax on some of these municipal bonds because the government treats some of these as a preference item? And of course, he was horrified because he bought municipal bonds for the sole reason to not have to pay taxes. And now I'm telling him that some of these municipal bonds are actually creating the alternative minimum tax, something he didn't count on. But here was the worst story. Not only were we talking about the AMT from his municipal bonds, but all the income from the municipal bonds flow over to his Social Security, and they also trigger the under the provisional income test, they trigger the Social Security benefit taxation. So here he was buying municipal bonds. Now he's paying AMT on some of it, and all of that income flows over to the provisional income test for Social Security to see if his benefits gets taxed. This is the new issue that's really becoming huge for planners, especially in retirement and with seniors. And another thing, now that we're in AMT, I was speaking at the CPA Society here in Scottsdale, and when I was speaking here, somebody raised their hand and asked me about the AMT charge on death benefit. And I understand where he was coming from because there are certain scenarios with corporations, usually C Corps, that could actually have a taxable event on the death benefit, and that could happen. But there's a lot of rules and regs under ACE that really will see if the person really will have to pay those taxes. But from a standpoint of taking withdrawals to basis and policy loans to gain out of a contract that's kept in force for the life of the insured, he's never going to pay AMT tax on the death benefit. It's going to be so low because remember, in the following series, we're going to talk about compressing the death benefit and making this the most efficient platform to launch accumulation that's going to be tax deferred, as well as taking money out tax-free via withdrawals to basis and policy loans to gain. This has been part one of our 5-part series entitled The Power of Tax-Free Retirement Income. For more information on the subject matter in the workshop, just email me at ssavant@creativeone.com.